Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Shaylee, and I am so excited to introduce our speaker for today, Liz Gleadle. I will first start by acknowledging the land we're on and my positionality. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am of German and Taiwanese descent, and I was born and raised on Plains Cree territory and the Métis Nation homeland, which is colonially known as Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And so today, where I am speaking to you from and where I now live is Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Coast Salish people's territory. And it's so important to acknowledge this as we move forward with dialogue because we live in spaces that have colonial history and a colonial reality. And as we see around us today, there are so many people still struggling at the hands of colonial violence and marginalization. And so, since this is an education platform, it's very important that we center ourselves and understand our responsibility in moving through this work. And so, today I'm so excited to introduce Liz Gleadle. A little bit about her: she is a Canadian Olympic javelin thrower. And she's actually a UBC alum, and I'm very proud to say that because I went to UBC, I'm still at UBC, and I played sports there for 5 years. And that's how I initially got to know Liz. And one of the many, many things I really admire and respect about her is the way that her experience in sports has made her so resourceful and knowledgeable. And she really has this passion to contribute to culture and society around her and really take other athletes under her wing and share some of this knowledge and experience she has to make sure that we have the knowledge and tools we need to reach our greatest potential. So I'm so excited to have her on today. We're going to be talking about body image. And I think this is so important because all of us, no matter our gender or identity, we are faced with social messaging and this perception of what we should or could look like. And it's also a very timely conversation because, as we know, it's COVID, and with social distancing, with just the different social reality we're living in right now, a lot of us are having different relationships with food, with our body. Things are changing. So I'm really excited to hear your experiences, Liz. And I'm sure a lot of us will have so many things to take away from it.
Awesome. Thanks, Shaylee. Perfect. Hi, I'm Liz Gleadle. I really am excited to talk about this today, partially because I'm now 31 and I've been doing track and field since I was 12. And it's been very interesting to kind of observe within myself all the changes that have happened and how I've identified with my body, not identified with my body. And a lot of this comes down to, I think, feeling like, I hate to say it a lot of the time, but a lot of this comes down to feeling good about yourself and feeling attractive as a person. And I think that it's super important to kind of reframe how we feel attractive as humans and reframe how we've kind of been socialized to not value female bodies that are athletic, and how it's constantly at odds with our performance, and how sometimes it's at odds with societal standards and even at odds with kind of what we think of other women and how we value their bodies. So I'd like to create a conversation about basically loving your body and learning to just change the way you look at it and changing the way we value it, starting with kind of looking at its value in function over aesthetic to some kind of strange perceived narrow definition of beauty. And then also talk about how women in sport can value each other's bodies and not necessarily covet them or judge them, but just view it as art, because, you know, the art is such a range of beautiful things, and I think we're really limiting ourselves when we don't kind of see the value in different forms of art, which is the human body. I'd also like to acknowledge that I am on Musqueam First Nation territory in Vancouver, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns, and I'm extremely Caucasian. I'm a big mix of European background. So it's always nice to acknowledge that, you know, again, we are in a situation where we are uninvited guests on this land, and I'm grateful to live here. And hopefully we can shed some more light on that through these Women's Sports Speaker Series and fundraising for it a little bit. So a little bit of background on me. Um, I am 31 years old now. I went to UBC and I got into track and field because I was in gym class and I was just testing out javelin, and I was one of the only kids in the class who A, threw the javelin straight, and B, did not hit themselves in the back of the head. Something people always do, they twist their wrist and they hit themselves. And then it continued from there, and I got a little bit better. And I remember when I was in grade 10, grades 8 through 12 all competed together. And as a grade 10, I came third at BC high school championships. And then I got invited to compete at BC championships for my age group in the club system, and I won. And then from there, I got invited to nationals, which I did not know was a thing. And it went there, and I won. So it really happened quite quickly for me, and it was really exciting because I played softball forever and I was a pitcher, and all those years of pitching actually made me an ideal candidate to switch over to track and field. So since then, it's been a really interesting ride because javelin is a huge power speed sport, and now I'm 6'1" and I'm 180 pounds, and I am the healthiest I've ever been. And growing up in high school, though, I was always growing. And so I was always just kind of had that, growing slight like baby fat to my face. And this was back in 2003, 2004. And I realized that I was just like, I didn't like the way I looked because I didn't look like models. And it really bothered me. And so when I started doing track and field and throwing javelins, I was told to get in shape, which was great. But then people realized very quickly that I was not eating, and it was constantly at odds with my goal. And I was trying to throw a javelin really far, and I would be starving myself on the side because I valued my aesthetics so much higher than my goals in sports. And one of the things I'd like to talk about at some point with anybody who can like raise their hand or have a Q&A, I've noticed that women drop out of sports at an unprecedented rate between kind of the ages of 12 and 15. And I personally think that a lot of it is that we value this aesthetic of, soft womanliness more than we value the aesthetic of women in sport or athletic bodies. And both have their values. And, if you're if you're not a big sports person, that's great. And if you're really into athletics, I think that should also be encouraged. So I thought that this was really strange that I was pursuing this goal and I didn't love the way I looked in pursuing this goal. So further down the way, when I was competing for UBC, I would muscle and then I would hate myself for it. And then but then I realized that I was pushing performance and I was getting better and better. And I started to actually really enjoy how my body functioned, and I took a lot of pride in it. But then I would tell myself that I wasn't beautiful, and I'd go back and forth. I'd say, okay, well, maybe I just need to give up on perceiving myself as beautiful or being beautiful in order to throw the javelin far. And I was not kind to myself. And it was really interesting because I think that what shows up to people isn't that, there's different body types all over the world. And there's different body types within one person over a lifetime. And the biggest thing that isn't beautiful is when someone doesn't like themselves or accept themselves for how they are. So it was kind of interesting when I went to the Olympics. The year leading up to the Olympics, I was like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to eat whatever food I need to eat. I'm going to gain whatever weight I need to gain. I needed to break the Canadian record just to make the Olympic team. And so at the time, I still had these perceptions that I needed to be thin to be beautiful. And I basically said, okay, I'm going to give it all up for sport. And through this strange year, I started realizing that I started valuing how strong my back was, or how muscular my shoulders were, or how big my legs are, and how I wouldn't fit into clothing that would fit everybody else. It would be misshapen on me because I would have such strange proportions for the way that I was training for javelin. So looking back, it's very interesting how I really had this perception of beauty that was incredibly narrow, and that was created by these unrealistic social pressures. And that's when I truly started to realize that your body is art, and all art is different, and all art is beautiful in its own way and to different people. And we see the value in art. We see the value between, a Picasso and a Monet, or, painting or abstract. And it's the same thing with our bodies and women's bodies and men's bodies and human bodies. they all have their own beautiful thing about them. And instead of coveting them or being jealous or shaming other people or thinking that they're not beautiful, we need to start looking at it a little bit differently. And these societal pressures, you know, they are a problem from marketing, they are a problem from community biases, but they start with us. And they start with us looking at ourselves and starting to like ourselves and picking out things that we value about our bodies for how it functions, how it serves us, and how it gets us through every single day. So with this conversation, I would like to basically talk about how if you don't value your body and you don't value your athletic body, you decrease your chance of reaching an athletic peak, because maybe you're not eating properly, or maybe you're not sleeping properly, or you know, maybe you stop training as hard because you don't want to look muscular. And I think we need to start wearing our muscular bodies as a point of pride that shows our values. I don't think it's very often that we get to show one of our values, like honesty or integrity or other things, and just wear them on our bodies like a canvas. So I think that when we wear sports on our bodies, we show our muscularness, our asymmetry, our calluses, our scars. And I think it's so beautiful because it shows how much you value your sport, and it shows how much you value a certain amount of dedication to something and to honing your craft, which is more than just being athletic. It's about so many things that we value as women. The other part is valuing our bodies to an objective standard, or comparing ourselves to other women. And how we can, I'd like to tell a story about the two friends that I had in college, which really made it clear to me how I could love myself and not compare myself to other women. And then lastly, I'd like to go over a little bit more kind of our goals, our values, our health, and our self-worth, and how they become secondary to kind of arbitrary aesthetics. So I'm curious, has anybody, like in the chat, I'm curious, like how many people have like not trained hard because they're afraid of putting on muscle, or they've, you know, quit a sport because they didn't want to look a certain way, or any of those things? I've eaten less. Yeah, that felt good. Absolutely. So I've sometimes just like refused to eat, or I have not shown up to practice, or I've not pushed weights heavy, or I've looked at myself in the mirror after a workout and it's been, I just like shame myself after all my hard work. So I'll just, you guys can throw questions in later or throw comments in later. I'll just keep talking as we go. But it's really interesting because a lot of women will just devalue their hard work. And I think it's really important to start conversations with younger women and really just show them how their bodies are beautiful in their own ways for their sports and how unique they are. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the story that Shaylee and I had talked about. So I think we all have that one friend who we think is more beautiful than us, or we're in a group of women and we all think they're all more beautiful than us. And then we, for some reason, like feel bad about ourselves. And I had these two friends in college. They were both on the track team. And one of them was basically, I'd like to say she was like a shorter, cuter version of me. And that's how I felt about it. And we would go out and she would get this attention. And I just felt awful about myself. I feel envious and I just feel less than. And then the other friend I'd go out with was the polar opposite of me. She was dark haired, blue eyes, like amazing looking Russian lineage woman. And it was so interesting how with her, I would just feel like, oh, she's just beautiful in a different way. And she's just, you know, she's got her own thing going on. And I would feel really good about myself because I started valuing how she looked and how I looked, and how we were both beautiful in different ways, and how she had a sprinter body, I had a javelin body. And I started to realize that the differences between myself and that friend, and the friend who was slightly more similar to me, was me, just because there was a smaller comparison. And when I started to realize my own value and cherishing my height and cherishing my broad shoulders and cherishing the fact that I had no waist, I just went straight from ribs to hip because there was so much muscle there, I started owning it. And I realized that people didn't approach my friend who looked a little bit more likely like me, who I thought was a little more attractive because she was more attractive. They approached her because I didn't value myself and because I didn't see the beauty within myself. So I think that was an incredibly important lesson, is that, all women compare themselves against each other. And when you start seeing how, your unique beauty is brought to the table, and you start valuing your body for what it does for you, you really step into your power and you become a force to be reckoned with and magnetic. So I'm going to go to the Q&A real quick. I struggle with not only comparing myself to the normal female body, but also other types of athletes within my own sport. Have you dealt with comparison within your sport? So track and field is the panacea of sport. We have everything from distance runners to shot putters on the ends of the spectrum. And being a javelin thrower, being very tall is very helpful. But there's definitely javelin throwers who have like 12 packs and are super ripped. And then there's other javelin throwers who are kind of softer and have like bigger hips. And it's very interesting how there's a massive spectrum. But that being said, I'm teammates with distance runners, I'm teammates with high jumpers, I'm teammates with all types of people. And what track and field has taught me is that we are all specified to our sport. And I love walking into a room and guessing what people do. And again, it's like art, and checking out people and dealing with that comparison is looking at someone and valuing their art and then valuing your own. So when I look in the mirror now and I compare myself to other athletes, I think, my arms are completely disproportionate. The right has a really large tricep and a really small bicep, and the left has a big bicep and a small tricep. And my back is enormous and it doesn't fit into clothing properly. I have to wear a size 12 dress just so I can fit into it, 12 or 14, but my waist is an 8. And I used to feel bad about that. And I used to feel bad about comparing myself to these other athletes within javelin even, and saying, oh, she's more ripped than me, or anything like that. But I realized that we're all doing our own thing. And the cool thing is that we're all so differently shaped and we're all on the same level. And it's not necessarily, there's no one way to, skin a cat. There's no one way to throw a javelin. There's no one way to look. And it's so interesting that we can all do it from a different perspective and a different body. So for another question, I struggle with not only comparing myself to the normal female body type, but also athletes within my own sport. Okay, is that the same thing? That is the same thing. Same question twice. All right. So on to the next part. So I wanted to talk about how goals, values, and health and self-worth have become secondary to this arbitrary aesthetic. So I know a lot of us, we often train and we don't think, oh yeah, I'm doing this exercise to improve my speed. We often think, oh, I'm doing this exercise and my ass is gonna look better. And I think, obviously if you're reading fitness magazines, and for, 99% of the population, maybe 90% of the population, a lot of people care about the aesthetic more than they care about the function. And I remember I heard about this really wonderful idea of having a centenarian Olympics. And the idea is that you'd be able to do a goblet squat with 30 pounds at the age of 100, because you could then, pick up a toddler at 100 years old, and that would be a form of function. And I think that a lot of valuing your performance in sport has to do with knowing what you're trying to do within your sport. If you're working out and you're lifting, wonder why you're doing a squat. Wonder why you're doing bench press. Ask yourself, what purpose is this going to serve me in my sport? And then you're going to start valuing the actual movement and valuing the workout for what it's designed to do for you as an athlete. So I think part of this is taking control of your workouts. And lots of us do team workouts, but I think it's really important to start asking your trainer, why are we doing this? And wonder why. Are we developing speed? Are we developing power? Are we trying to get bigger muscles so that we can make them fast later? Are we trying to do this for rehab or for posture so that we don't get injuries later? And when you start being a little bit in control of your workouts and not just doing them, but wondering why you're actually doing something, it gives you power to control your body. And when you can control your body, you can take a step back and you can see it as a tool. You can see it as a vehicle. And it's not just, a body is a representation of what you're doing. So if your body is a vehicle, it is not you. It is something that you're using to walk around in life. And I like to kind of use the analogy of a car, because I say, like, you know, okay, well, if you sprain your ankle or you dent the fender, you're going to have to rehab it properly. Otherwise, you're going to be driving around with a busted up fender and it's not going to work properly. Or, you know, if you are a Ferrari and you put low grade gas fuel in it, how do you think that's going to turn out in the performance of the Ferrari? So being like asking yourself questions like, how am I supporting my health? All right, what's that? Apparently it's dusty in my house because we're doing a lot of construction. Not COVID. So another part that made me realize the value and the beauty of my body is when I was started to manipulate it purposefully and healthfully. So eating good food, getting 8 hours of sleep, doing rehab exercises, actually paying attention to what I was doing in the gym instead of just going through the motions. And anytime you take control of the situation and you make it about performance, it becomes fun and it becomes a game. And then you realize your body is whatever you want it to be, especially in sport. If you want to be stronger, you can do it because you understand some of it and you understand what you're doing to go towards it. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. So I think a lot of people, you know, you can value what your body is doing for you. You can look at your legs and be like, those are powerful legs, and like, I made those. And it's not something that you're just, you know, we're not given a body and then that's just what it is. We can shape it and we can mold it to whatever we want it to be. And I think it's so powerful when we shape it for function, because there's nothing like, you know, playing soccer and deking someone out, or in my case, throwing a javelin and having every ounce of power go into it. And looking a certain way has never made me feel this, like, even a fraction of the joy that achieving something in sport has, because it's so much more than just a look. Oh, okay. So one of the last parts I wanted to talk about, and it's definitely a bit of an aside, is that I think, you know, we should all value what we have, and, you know, we should all be healthy and look after ourselves and value our bodies as healthy vehicles.
Sorry, Liz, I think you're frozen. We seem to have lost her. Bear with us for a moment here. I do encourage you guys to put comments in the chat function or in the Q&A function, and we'll make this as interactive as possible, and hopefully we get her back here. Oh. Welcome back.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, my internet completely cut out. I like literally don't have internet right now, so I'm on data. Yeah, sorry about that.
That is all right. Okay.
Don't worry, while you were gone, we were just talking about how awesome you are. So carry on.
Oh my goodness. Okay, cool. I pulled it up my phone. I'm just gonna go back to my notes here real quick. Oh yeah, so I was talking about, so a lot of the time we look at our bodies and we think, okay, like I look disproportionate. And I remember doing this to myself back in 2012. And I was thinking that my back was so huge, my butt was so small, and I just thought that I was shaped that way. And same thing with my calves. My calves just, and my ankles were permanently like swollen. And I just thought that my legs were shaped that way. And when I started taking, my back problem actually got so bad that I went and saw a physiotherapist. And I realized that these aren't problems with my body. It was that I was misaligned, and I was so misaligned, and I was so strong in ways that were not great for my health that I was pulling myself into all these strange shapes with muscular development. So although team programs are amazing, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to question what's going on. If you look in the mirror and something looks highly like overdeveloped, or you think that your back is hyper swayed or your ankles are permanently swollen, it is not your body. It is that your body is responding to the training load or to the training program, or maybe it's not moving correctly and you need to redo motor patterns. So I know a lot of people feel really unempowered sometimes with their bodies. And I remember this one situation where one of my training partners, her calves just looked like they went straight into her foot. And I said, you know, that has nothing to do with your legs being shaped that way. She was complaining about it and how she'd been like, how heels look. I was like, it has everything to do with the fact that your feet are swollen because your ankles have been, your ankles are so stuck in one place that they're not flushing properly. And I just, I did an ankle manipulation on her and I flushed out her calves, and her feet just like appeared. The bones in her feet showed through and they were no longer swollen. And you know, if you see something wrong with your body, or you don't like how it's functioning, or you think that you are misaligned, definitely get an opinion by a physiotherapist, because it's really, really important to, in sports and for performance, to take those hints from the mirror and to wonder if that's actually something structural that's going on, or more likely if it's something that you've trained your body into looking like. So that's kind of one of the last bits of conversation that I had to go. Did we want to, I see a Q&A here. I'm using my phone now, so it's a little bit different. I'm a male coaching female athletes. Ooh, good for you. I have female assistant coaches on my team, and if I saw a need for conversation about body image, I would refer to my female coaches. Really good idea for teenagers, because we're sensitive about that sometimes at that age. But I know that this is an issue, and I'm nervous about handling this correctly if one of my athletes brings it up in a conversation with me. Any advice to male coaches to ensure that I'm supporting female athletes if they bring up these issues? Yeah, I think that, you know, it's obviously hard with the climate and, you know, wanting to be very correct and making everything a very safe space. I think that at the time that I was having my eating disorder in high school, my coach just came up to me and asked me if everything was okay. And you know, you can't force anybody out of having these massive issues, but knowing that people are there and they're not forcing you to do anything, but they're like, if you let people know that you're a resource for them, and if they want help with anything, like you're there for them, I think that's massive, because a lot of us just feel like we're not supported, or that we're not understood. And you don't necessarily need to feel like other people are trying to fix you. You just want to know that they're there. So I think that's kind of my biggest piece of advice. And also, you know, if someone is feeling bad about their body, then, you know, you give them tools to understand their body better. And you say like, okay, well, you know, are you hydrating well? What are you having for breakfast? And you put them on a high performance, you give them high performance tips. So you say like, okay, well, you know, link them up with a nutritionist, or link them up with, you know, a physiotherapist. Because a lot of these times, the way I've kind of solved my own issues is understanding them better, and understanding alignment, understanding rehab to fix posture, understanding nutrition to feel better about my body, because then I could, use good nutrition and healthy habits to, regulate my body composition, which was more healthy than just not eating because I didn't know what else to do. So knowledge is power, and giving anybody great resources is always incredibly helpful, along with just letting them know that you're there. Cool. So
Yeah.
I think
Right. I just thank you so much. I think it's so inspiring that you're sharing your story and you're sharing that with us. And I think there's a comment in the chat, you may have seen that from one of your friends.
Allison,
Yeah. It's so fantastic to be able to have these conversations. And I know I have some questions for you, because I when you were telling your story, there's so many of those things I was like, yep, I was there. So I want to talk about high school, because I think so many people forget that when we're in high school and we're athletes, people don't teach us about nutrition, right? Like that nutrition is not there. So do you have any tips for parents, coaches? How do we start to educate these kids? Are there resources, dietitians? What do you recommend?
I mean, I kind of just went on a bit of down a rabbit hole with everything, and I really enjoyed it. I think just contacting a dietitian and creating meals. I think making meals fun is really important, and finding things you like, and including a ton of vegetables, and finding vegetables you like that are different. I mean, we have Instagram now, which is kind of like my favorite source for everything, and I love that you can save something and save it in a category. And so whenever I see a meal that I really like, I save it to that category. And then when I go back to it, I have like a resource or an idea. And you don't want to just save and never do anything. But I think it's really important to challenge yourself if you're in high school or if you're in university to find a great recipe. I know that it's just so much easier to eat when my favorite go-to chicken recipe is equal parts of lime, olive oil, and soy sauce. And I just marinate it and I throw it on the barbecue. And then I always have chicken on hand. And then for a salad, it's I got really used to eating very simple salads, because it would be fun to throw in whatever I could and see what worked together. So I'll always have cabbage in the fridge, kale, carrots, tomatoes, different kinds of small vegetables that I can chop up thin, throw some oil on, throw some quinoa in, throw some chicken on, and you're good. So it doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be colorful. It needs to fuel your body with enough carbs, whether it's rice or quinoa or bread if you can eat it, and some kind of protein, whether it's meat or another source. So I think keeping it simple, keeping it with lots of vegetables, and making sure that you're fueling your body, and maybe research every once in a while. Find out why quinoa is really an interesting superfood. Find out the difference between organic and non-organic chicken if you want to make that choice, or find out what your favorite vegetables are and why. Because knowledge is power, and when you know things about food, it becomes really fun to play with them.
That is fantastic advice, and I think that idea of keeping it simple is so important, especially we're so busy as it is. So I want to talk about the idea, and I was laughing when you talked about wearing a size 12 dress, because I think so many people on the outside don't understand how women's clothing is not made for athletes. When I was still playing, I wore pants that were a size 12, and now I wear a size 6, and I'm like, there's contrast, right? I'm interested, kind of advice for girls when they're going to buy clothes. Where are you shopping? Where are you finding clothes that you're like, I can feel good in this?
For one, I'm 6'1", so I have to buy my pants either at Bobby Jeans if you're tall, or ASOS, because they have clothing for tall people. You just get whacked with the duty. But my biggest thing has been recently, I wish I'd been doing this for years. I buy the size that fits my legs, and then I get it taken in at the waist. And I buy the size that fits my shoulders, and I pay the money, and I get it taken in. And we're in this culture where we feel like we have to have a ton of clothes, but you don't need a ton of clothes. You just need a couple of pieces that look great, that make you feel good. And as an athletic woman, you're not going to feel good if your clothing doesn't fit you right. And so you don't need a lot of pieces, but get your clothing tailored. I got my spandex tailored so it would come at the waist, and it was a game changer. I think I took off 4 inches at the waist, but like they were like almost like splitting edges on my legs. And I'm not pulling my pants up all the time anymore because my pants actually fit me. So tailor your clothes, just get less clothes, get better clothes, and then just tailor them.
Great advice. And one I think we all need to take. Thank you for that. I want to talk about so you talked about your training, and you talked about using physio, and I'm wondering kind of what does that training environment look like for you now that you have all that knowledge? What are all the different I guess practitioners that you're utilizing, and how has that changed your training and kind of your performance?
So my practitioners are Dr. LJ Lee and Dr. Mary Lou Lammy, or Dr. Mary Lou Lammy, physio Mary Lou Lammy primarily. They're incredible. They're in North Vancouver, and they're both, LJ created the Connect Therapy ring model. And what happened to me is that I had an enormously sway back. And whenever I went to throw a javelin, what you do in javelin is you run forward, then you turn sideways, and you're going as fast as you can, and then you stop yourself with your left leg and try and sling your right side of your body to create a human sling around the hard left side. And all the power would shoot out my lower back because of this sway back. And it's because I trained so hard with my upper body that I had a bad motor pattern. And so when I benched, for example, I would use my lats, not my arms. And so my back got enormous and my arms were kind of small comparatively. And I had this no butt, and it was because my lats were taking over for everything. And then I ended up having back issues. And then when they finally went through and they released all this stuff on my chest and all this pent up tension in my rib cage, the first thing that they did to me when they adjusted me for the first time, they created all this space in my rib cage, and I took the first deep breath that I'd taken in like maybe 6 or 7 years. And I didn't realize how much tension I put my body under and how much I've been putting power through these bad motor patterns, these bad movement patterns. And so since then, they released my feet so that they've grown now a size and a half each. And my feet are now a size 13 women's, but they function properly and my calves function properly. So when I talk about seeing practitioners, I think it's really important to, don't just be like, oh, I'm sore. Look at why are my shoulders completely rounded forward? This isn't right. Why can't I open up my chest? Or, my legs are constantly swollen. Why? What do I need to do to my feet? I'm constantly on them. Do I need to roll them out? Do I need to get massage on them? And I think it's really hard. We train so hard, and then often we don't realize that we actually have to do quite a bit of recovery. And it's a huge component that, people are like, oh yeah, roll out and stretch a little, but it's more than that. And so if you're starting to see imbalances in your body, I think it's really important to find a practitioner. And if they don't know, if you're getting hip problems for no explained reason, like it's time to see another practitioner if they don't realize what's going on. And it's important to get referrals. So yeah, I think it's don't blame yourself. Always just look for more answers, and practitioners will have an answer for you. And a lot of the time they're just trying to get you back on the field. But if you tell them that you have alignment things that you want to fix, like they want to help you.
I think that's fantastic advice. And I think it's one all athletes need to pay attention to, because so often we neglect our body because we think, oh, well, it's normal, it's part of sport, but it is not.
Yes, absolutely.
So we have another question. Any tips for coaches, parents involved in sports where uniforms are really tight and athletes are very body conscious? How do we help athletes with their self-esteem and body image?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, we're given only spandex to compete in. At my first Olympic Games, it was actually, we were given warm-up spandex and we were given warm-up shorts. And it was the choice between the bikini bottoms or like the very short shorts. And we didn't know if we were going to be able to wear these longer pants. And it was a problem for a hammer thrower and I, because, she was like 250 pounds and 5'10", and she's like, I'm not wearing these. Like, go to hell. And then my problem was that my legs would rub together in shorts. And so I was like testing out different types of body glides leading up to the Olympics, because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to compete in these shorts. And they finally gave in, but it was a massive struggle. And like, it's hard. I mean, like the uniforms were assigned are the uniforms that were assigned. And if we're in clubs, I think we can try and be a little more inclusive to have a variety of options. And especially like at like, high school age or even university age, I think it's really important to make people feel comfortable. I just got used to it at a very young age because track and field, everybody's running around in spandex, but it definitely doesn't feel good to have ill-fitting clothing, as we were talking about before. So I think it just maybe like being super proactive with your organizers and being like, hey, we got to make sure that there's options. Like it can't just be short shorts and, really tight shirts. There has to be options for stuff that hangs a little bit longer shorts. And, we can put these orders in.
Great advice. And I think that might probably also help others feel like they can participate, right? Because for some people, that uniform might be what prevents them.
Absolutely. And if it's in your mindset that you're not comfortable with the way you look, you're not focusing on your performance. You're focusing on something that has nothing to do with performance.
Okay, another question. Any advice for athletes in sports where being lean is important for injury and prevention? So,
Yeah.
for example, things that involve a lot of jumping, but there's pressures from coaches to lose weight.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of high jumpers, for example, who are like, they're heavier high jumpers and they're still jumping just as high. And I think power to weight ratio is incredibly important. And, there's people who just can't produce enough power, so they have to be lighter. But then there's those people who are often the people being told to lose weight, but they're like generating incredible amounts of power. And relative to their body weight, it doesn't matter. And, it's always a fine dance. And when someone's pressuring you and you believe that you are strong and healthy, I have never talked to a single, for example, high jumper or distance runner who ever said, I really loved being that skinny and having a lot of pressure on me. They all said, when I was happy and I was eating well and I was eating healthily, then that's when I felt my best because I was so confident in how my body performed and how healthy it was. So, for coaches pressuring you, if they're really pressuring you that much, unfortunately, there is a weight you need to be to get over bar eventually. If you are an overweight high jumper, it's not going to benefit you. You have to be cognizant of your sport and your weight, unfortunately, but they're for sure, you can be healthy and do it. And if you're a healthy weight and you feel healthy and your coach is pressuring you, it's tough, but they're the wrong coach for you. So I think it takes a lot of willpower to leave a coaching situation, but like we all know when we feel healthy. And if we feel healthy and someone's making you feel like you're not worthy, they've got the wrong mindset and they're obviously not willing to work on a program that benefits you and your strengths.
Such an important factor, right? Health needs to be number one. And maybe the coach is wrong. It happens.
It happens. They are not God.
Yes. I think this one's just a comment, but it says, thank you for sharing your voice. As a mom to young girls who are very tall, it's wonderful that they can look to you for strength and inspiration. So
yeah, definitely. Like for the tall women, my biggest advice is like never slouch, own your height, because I think I went through high school for probably until grade 11 feeling bad. I was like, oh God, please don't hit 6'1", please don't hit 6'1". And eventually when I got there, I realized that I was like, no, I like being this tall. I can see the top of the fridge. Like I can find my friends in a crowd. Like people can always see me. And it's been one of the biggest things that I always get complimented on is you carry yourself so well and your height is so amazing. And like, you obviously enjoy being tall and like, don't hide what you are. Like, that's such an amazing thing to be. It's so much fun. Like, I think it's such a different experience to go through the world being a really tall woman. And I always think it's very interesting to go through the experience of being a very short woman because, you have to speak up for yourself and you have to like take up a certain amount of force and, you have to be a strong-willed, shorter person. And I think that's really amazing that women have this capability to make their voices heard when they're smaller or walk into a room and just be tall and for some people, it's a benefit. So.
Yes, I think it's so amazing that you can own that and feel strong in that and find joy and worth in that because it's so important. And I know there's so many women that probably look at you and admire that. So amazing. Let me see. I think is there any other questions? We'll see if there's any more questions that come in. All right. Okay. It looks like no more questions. I want to, before we wrap up, I want to say what's next for you, because I know you're training right now, right? So.
So I just actually am 6 weeks post-op appendicitis. So it's been a couple weeks of yoga and running now, which has been really great. And yeah, I'll just be, excuse me, choking my water again. I'll just be training. I'm getting back in the garage gym and lifting probably next week, which will be very exciting. And I'm excited to be feeling healthy now that I have this appendix out, which has apparently been a chronic issue for years. So it's always an exciting opportunity to be like, okay, I'll have a new level of health that I've never had before. So with a little bit of adversity always comes a little bit of opportunity. So I'm excited for that.
Well, that's fantastic. And we wish you best of luck. I know you've got your sights on Tokyo, which we're hoping is happening in 2021 now. So good luck with your training. And thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience with us. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that are inspired and ready to own their own bodies. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's nice to talk. Thanks everyone for the questions and really nice comments.
Thank you to everyone who joined us. This has been an amazing week. This was our last talk, but thank you to everybody for joining and coming on this journey with us.